I starting or are you starting? I'm starting. Okay. Welcome, folks, to WWGOA Live, the July 2016 version. Now, I'm going to make a qualifying statement right from the start here. The weather here in scenic western Wisconsin has been pretty hit or miss all afternoon. Some thunder boomers rolling through, some pretty sketchy weather. So, in fact, when I walked over here from the house, it was raining cats and dogs. And I knew that because I stepped in a poodle. So anyway, if there's a power outage, if we suddenly go dark here, it's because we lost power. All right, Krista, that's possibly my last bad joke for the night, but no promises.
I just want you to know, Sam has said you are grounded now because of that joke.
I can't go out tonight?
And you can't tell any more jokes tonight.
People like my jokes.
I don't think
just
so.
Like, don't make me, just like we ask where people are watching from, don't make me ask if people like my corny jokes.
Okay.
I'm going to start with this. And I know Krista's already got, Krista's running the camera, Sam's running the board. We've already got questions, but I'm very excited about this. So I want to talk about it. I was recently in Ashland, Wisconsin, and there's a company up there called Ancient Wood. And you can watch for an article about this coming up on WWGOA and a little bit of a video. This is amazing. This is a piece of kauri, and it's from New Zealand. And here's the dealio. This tree tipped over maybe 50,000 years ago in New Zealand. Died a natural death. You look puzzled. And it fell into a peat bog, anaerobic environment, very little air. It laid in that peat bog all this time. At the time the tree fell over, it was maybe as much as 2,000 years old. So 2,000-year-old tree has been laying under peat moss for maybe 50,000 years. It's being dug up, cut into slabs, exported to little Ashland, Wisconsin, not that far north of here, where a company is, I believe they're the only North American importers of this stuff. It is amazing. There are slabs there that are wider than my arms are long. There are slabs there that are 7 feet wide, 15, 20 feet long. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful chunks of wood. When I was there, they were making tables for executive suites all over the place. So they do a couple things. They make stuff with the material, and they also sell the raw material. Prices go anywhere from $50 to $300 a board foot, but absolutely beautiful stuff. And what a cool story that it's 50,000 years old. It's like a little piece of Jurassic Park. I think I can see a footprint of a Tyrannosaurus, right? No. Okay, never mind. So watch for a story on this on WWGOA.com, and it'll include sourcing information for where you can get the lumber. This is a bow blade I'm going to turn as part of that, so I get an idea of working characteristics. All right, Krista. I couldn't find a Gatorade bottle, so we're going straight to the tumbler for water.
Okay.
What?
Right.
What are you giggling
Somebody
about?
just wanted you to know that 2,000 years, even if you add 50,000, is not the same as millions of years to be prehistoric, George.
Well.
No, let's stop. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to jump into the questions. As I think most of our viewers know, we try and get through as many questions as we can. Go ahead and post them down here below where you're watching. We'll get them, and we'll try and get through them.
Hey, hit them with the banner thing as long as we're at the top of the hour
yes.
here.
Great. And right underneath what you're watching, there's a banner. If you click on it, it's going to pop you out to a website where you can get a free download about buying routers.
Yeah, you're staying on WWGOA, but we'll take you to a different page. So do this later. Don't do it now because this is going on. But yeah, there's a free downloadable. Let me turn that off. I thought I did. There's a free downloadable guide there. That's my super duper ringer, so I can hear it when I'm running tools. You'll be able to download a guide for free. What? We're off to a great start. You'll be able to download a how to buy a router guide for free. I'm going to quit talking because I can't seem to get in the right direction here. Go ahead and ask me a question.
Okay.
Let's play Stump the Dummy, starting right now.
That shouldn't be too hard today.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay. See, my jokes are funny.
Yes.
Okay. Michael says he has a problem with mortises. Are his chisels just dull? Do you have any tips or tricks?
Well, Michael, so the first thing to know would be when you're talking about chisels and mortises, do you mean you're hand cutting a mortise, or are you talking about hollow chisels on a mortiser? Hollow chisel mortiser, there is a lot of information about this on WWGOA.com. And my advice, we've talked about this in other lives, upper right-hand corner of the web page, there's a search window. And if you put in there mortise, you're going to get a lot of information. It is imperative on a hollow chisel mortiser that the chisels are sharp, as with any tool. Just in case you're talking about hand tool work, Krista, I'm going to ask you to like come in and point down at the bench. And I'm going to get some stuff. And then I'm going to come back to where you is. I've got a piece of cherry here, and if you're hand chopping a mortise, chisels need to be sharp, but there's also some specific technique involved. And my area is right there, or is that where you are? Mm-hmm. With our chisel, or sorry, with our layout, we want to have lines scribed on the face that are the same width as the chisel. And a great way to do that is with a mortise gauge. And you can set the mortise gauge to the width of the chisel, scribe those lines. Now I'm going to qualify this by saying this, what I'm about to show you goes back about 25 years to when I did hand tool joinery for Peace Corps in Africa. And honestly, since then, I have not done a lot of hand tool work. So my disclaimer is I'm not going to have the muscle memory here that I had 25 years ago when I was teaching in Swaziland. But the key to this, to getting started, is I'm doing all of these little chops. Staying in between the score lines. Who made this mortise so long? I'm going to stop there so I don't bore you to tears. Then, bevel down, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take those out. I'm only going as deep as the chop. And I need to define the end of my mortise over here with a good chop. Define the end of my mortise over here. In this case, the bevel is to the inside of the mortise. And then rinse and repeat. So part of the reason I'm doing this is because if Michael's having an issue with a hand chop mortise, it could be that you're trying to take too much out at one time. You got to do these little baby steps here. Then we come back again, bevel is down, and then see how easy all those little chunkies come out of there, right up to where we define. And then, of course, with our chisel, never pry. I'm probably about to block the camera. Because prying, especially with a smaller chisel like this, can easily break the chisel. And we just keep going and going and going. Now I'm going to qualify this a little bit. If you get right on that chisel, Krista, we'll do a little bonus here. That is a bevel edge chisel. It's not actually a mortise chisel. And if you look at that compared to that, did I do that in the right spot for you? You can see two chisels? Yep. Okay. This is a mortise chisel. This is a bevel edge chisel. This is actually more helpful when you're cleaning in between dovetails. With that shape, it allows you to get up against the angle of the tail. A mortise chisel, look at how stout that is. So when we do this heavy pounding that we're doing here, it can take that much better. It's way less likely to break on you.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, George. All right. So Daniel has a question.
Just go ahead and I'm going to get my stuff off the bench while you're talking.
Great. Daniel says anytime he sees a woodworking professional making cabinets or furniture online. I think he says, I don't know, it says, I do see them consider wood movement or even mention it, but I think it's supposed to say I do not.
Oh.
Right? I do not see them mention wood movement. When should wood movement be considered and by what size gap?
Well, anytime you're working with solid wood, almost anytime you're working with solid wood, it's a consideration. Now, the caveat to that would be if the pieces are really narrow, every piece of wood expands and contracts. I'm going to grab a huge chunk of material. Stay where you are, Chris. I'll be right back. All right, how's that for a big piece? This is a huge piece of cherry I got from my friend Paul Mayer. He writes for GOA. The reason I brought this over here is because expansion and contraction is a linear relationship. A way to express this would be a 12-inch wide piece of cherry in this part of the country where it's pretty dry in the winter, humid in the summer, could expand and contract a 1/4 inch. That means if 12 inches moves a 1/4 inch, 24 inches moves a 1/2 inch, 36 inches moves 3/4 of an inch. So a really narrow piece of wood is expanding and contracting, but it's doing it so minimally that you don't really have to worry about it. Anytime that you're to a point where you're gluing pieces together, you're making a tabletop, some kind of big panel, a door panel, you want to allow for wood movement. The amount that you allow is going to depend on where you live. Here, again, we have these huge, pretty good humidity swings in Wisconsin. On a 12 to 16 inch wide door panel, if I'm making it in the winter time when it's dry, I'm going to undersize it by about a 1/4 of an inch so it has the opportunity to expand in the winter. If I'm making it, no, I said that wrong. Yeah, if I'm making it in the winter when it's dry, I'm going to make it undersized so it can expand in the summer. If I'm making it in the summer when humidity is high, I can make it pretty close to its final size, to a fitted size, because it's only going to get smaller as we get to drier times of winter. So you really, I would say you always need to allow for it. The bigger the piece you're working with, the more critical allowing expansion and contraction to happen is. Never try to limit it. So a real bad move, and I see woodworkers try and get away with this, would be to take a wide piece like this and then to it fasten a piece like this rigidly meaning we glue those together, because that glue is going to prevent this piece from being able to expand and contract. Wood only moves across its width, not on its length. So if these are rigidly glued together, that piece is going to crack.
Wonderful, thank you. Carol would like to know, what is the difference between sanding sealer and regular unwaxed shellac, and when would you use one over the other?
In my experience, as far as function goes, they're pretty similar. So I used to buy, I applied a lot of lacquer in my life, and I used to buy a sanding sealer that was with that same lacquer, Sherwin-Williams lacquer, Sherwin-Williams sanding sealer. In more recent years, I've changed and I use dewaxed shellac, Zinsser seal coat as my undercoat all the time. And I'm currently primarily putting that under water-based finishes that I use. So from a functionality perspective, I find that they're the same. Having the dewaxed shellac in the shop gives me more finishing opportunities with that product than having sanding sealer in the shop. So end of the day, my very subjective test is they're pretty interchangeable.
Okay. Bruce would like to know, when finishing with tung oil, is it necessary to sand between coats?
I don't think that you have to from an adhesion perspective. And I'm going to qualify this. I've used very little tung oil on projects, so I'm not a huge tung oil expert. But But with some finishes, polyurethane is an example, you must sand between coats in order to tooth the finish so that layer number 2 sticks to layer number 1. With finishes like shellac and lacquer, you don't have to because they'll melt into each other. With tung oil, I don't think that layer number 2 is melting into layer number 1, but I think you'll have a bond no matter what. Before you're finishing the heirloom kitchen table that you're making, based on my advice, I check that out one more time just to make sure. But I don't think that you have to sand between coats unless you need it to get nibs off of it to level it out.
Okay. Mark, he's got a comment and then a question. He's had some instances of table saw kickback and has been fortunate enough to avoid serious injury.
Good.
Without going into any gory details, let's just say he wants to change. Okay? So he's stuck with a wonderful table saw, but it's an older Delta and was made before riving knives became standard or commercially available. He would like your opinion about the micro jig splitter system versus the shark or fork. The last two have a blade guard, whereas the micro jig does not. Since he's wanting an anti-kickback protection primarily and not blade protection or dust collection, what do you recommend?
All right, well, let's head for the table saw and talk about what Mark is talking about. So here's, if you come down, I'm going to take the dust off. If you come down kind of where you can see the splitter. So here's the deal. Commonly when we get kickback on a table saw, you've got a couple things going on here. What can happen is that as we're cutting our material, if it's not stable, it reacts. And it might start to pinch in behind the saw blade or expand behind the saw blade. So the dynamic here is that the saw blade is spinning toward me. The front of the blade is, of course, driving down toward the table. The back of the blade is lifting up. If the material pinches in and it gets on these teeth behind the blade and they start to lift it, it'll climb on top of the blade, and that's one cause of kickback. Another cause of kickback can simply be you ineffectively handling the material. Maybe you're cutting plywood, which doesn't really have that instability problem, but as instead of keeping it tight against the fence, it creeps off the fence, same problem. It starts to climb up onto the saw blade, and from there leads to kickback. What I would like to see, and I'm not familiar with all the products that he's asking about, in my perfect cartoon bubble, in addition to a splitter, I want to see these anti-kickback pawls for protection. So what happens here is that these pawls have very, very sharp teeth on them, and they create a one-way gate. I'm just looking for a chunk of wood. They create a one-way gate so that when material slips under there, the teeth are pointing that way. And if we have a violent kickback, then those teeth will engage and prevent that from being able to come back from it. What the splitter is doing is it's acting as a fin that when you start ripping your material, if it starts to react funny and try to pinch in, this is acting as a wedge, a space taker upper, so that it goes into that saw kerf and prevents them from spinning in or pinching in on the back of the blade. So we can head back, unless you had another table saw question pending.
I don't think so. Oh, maybe.
All right, well, we can stay here and wrap
How about
up.
we just stay here?
Okay.
Okay.
So I've seen the micro jig setup, and I like it that it's a table saw insert that's providing a splitter. So we are getting that filling the kerf option. It's not giving us anti-kickback, but I can see where it would have applications. The other two products, the Shark and the Bjork or Bork, I'm not familiar with. But like I said, in my perfect all-around bubble of protection, I'd like to see a splitter and the anti-kickback pawls.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm scrolling through here. I don't see any table saw questions
All
right
right.
now, but I'm going to just throw a question out and we can maybe work our way back. So Robert has a question. It looks like he's been on hiatus from woodworking for a few years. Wants to get back into it. His question is it better to get something like a track fence arrangement that will allow you to use a power saw, your router, and your jigsaw from above, or is it better to have a traditional table for each device? He does have limited funds.
Okay. Bunch of qualifiers to this. So what Robert's asking about is, as an example, let's use something like the Festool system. A lot of companies make these. The aluminum track is capable of carrying a router, a circ saw. I'm not 100% sure if their jigsaw has a device that goes into the track, but in many cases that operates, for instance, with the circ saw that rides in the track, operates to some extent in lieu of having a table saw. So question would be, could I get that system and not have a table saw, a router table? And I would say sort of. I mean, people do it. My understanding is that in Europe, where space is very limited, track systems like Festool are immensely popular because people are doing a lot of woodworking in a really, really small space. In the perfect world, I guess I'm going to kind of liken this to back when I used to own a shopsmith. And I was doing all my woodworking in a barely one-car garage, a really tiny space. So the shopsmith worked for me. It did mean changing the function all the time. Today, the ability to walk from one tool to another and have it do what I need to do. I love that convenience, but more space, more money. So it's a decision that you got to make based on the kind of woodworking you're going to do, how much money you have to spend, how much space you can dedicate to the hobby. Small space track system is a great way to go.
Okay, great. And for any of you just joining us, I'm here with George Von Driska, the managing editor of Woodworkers Guild of America. And today, as you're watching, if you look at the banner underneath the video, you can click on that. That's going to take you to another WWGOA page where you can sign up and download a free router buying guide. For all you guys that really have been wanting to get a router and you have questions, go out, download that, and that should help you out. Okay, so John wants to know, why should he buy a professional model over a contractor model for the SawStop?
I think as the saws get larger, well, a couple things here. The motor in the contractor style SawStop is larger than what's in the job site saw. The motor that's in the big cabinet saw is larger than what's in the contractor saw. So one thing horsepower gets us, if you're in a continuous duty kind of an application, having a 220 volt larger horsepower motor is going to serve you better just from a longevity perspective. Quality of any of their saws is great. My particular saw is set up 52-inch fence. That's my capacity, my wingspan way out here to the edge. So if I need to cross-cut an entire sheet of plywood on this machine, I can. If you've got the real estate to take that, it's a great thing to have. If you've got the room in your shop, this is a 3-horse cabinet saw. You don't have to have the 3-horse saw to get the larger fence. So you can marry different fences into different bodies of saw, but you gain horsepower and motor size with the larger saws.
Perfect. Okay, so George, Jeff would like to know, what are your thoughts on using imported plywood to save money? And do you have any recommendations for making and installing frameless cabinets that would help to avoid his installation problem? It's hard for him to get his cabinets perfectly side by side.
All right, so part one, imported plywood. Like anything out there, there's plywood and there's plywood. So I will say in my case, ran classes in my shop. I've run classes in my shop for years and bought a lot of that material from home centers like Home Depot. What I have found is that the B grade oak veneered plywood that's about $45 a sheet at Home Depot is nowhere near the same quality material as the B grade oak veneered plywood I buy from a hardwood supplier, for which I might pay $60 a sheet. So I'm paying more. But one of the things I found is that when in classes, we would cut dados in that less expensive material, and sometimes we'd get chipping. And great dado, $300 dado head on a high quality saw. Why are we getting chipping? And what I finally figured out is that it's actually the core of the material was letting go, and it was pulling the veneer with it. And as a result, it was chipping the veneer. So pretty soon I started going with the higher quality stuff, spending more per sheet. Another thing I found is the face veneer was so much nicer. By nicer, I mean had a better looking grain, was much better color match to solid wood I was using in the same project. For instance, the face frame of that cabinet. So I think it's definitely worth investing in the better quality plywood that had come from a hardwood supplier. When you're building a frameless cabinet, and I know that's what this question is about, is frameless cabinet and a frameless cabinet, putting two of them side by side, and it can be difficult to get those cabinets to close. My advice would be go ahead and build the cabinets and then add a mullion of some kind between the two so that it's covering any discrepancies that you have. So 2 3/4 inch case sides, that's 1.5 inches. Leave the cabinets a 1/4 inch apart, that's 1 3/4 inches, and then maybe do a 1 inch mullion right down the center to cover that gap. And don't worry about trying to get those frameless cabinets to close perfectly side to side.
Thank you. Larry has a question about the CNC machine.
Okay.
Okay. Can you do
Computer
3D,
numerical control.
Can you do 3D carvings on them?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Or can you take a picture of someone and carve them on a board or an embossed piece of wood or something on your CNC?
Okay. So 3D modeling can be done, not by me because I'm not good at it. It's really, really difficult. It's a lot of design work in the software to take a 2D photograph and change that into a 3D object. So I'm going to go back to the first part of the question. Can you do 3D stuff? Yes. And I can't believe there's got to be something laying around here. I know there's a plaque right over this door. So this is
Tilt it the other way. There you go. Thank you.
okay. This bow hunter is 3D clip art. This was laid out. This was designed on VCarve software. There's a plethora of 3D clip art that's available. Pretty easy to set up and run. You drag and drop it into the software. Takes a little bit of setup to get the 3D to cut, but not a lot. It's very intuitive, very user-friendly. To get this same look from someone's face, pretty difficult, pretty significant programming. My understanding is you can actually use an Xbox Kinect, and that's capable of getting a 3D image in stages. So you shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, move. You then import that into, I don't think it goes into VCarve, it goes into another software, but it's provided the information that you need to get a 3D. So there's ways to do it, but it's not simple.
Okay. Harry would like to know, how do you get the correct measurement to drill the 35mm inset for the hinge from the bottom and top of the door for the compact Blue Motion hinges?
Blue Motion. So Bloom, Sheba just laid down on the dust collector foot switch right there, Krista. Just hit it on the dust collector. Isn't it wonderful to have it? So we got the Benchdog turning on the dust collector and the phone ringing tonight. So Bloom is a hinge company. Blue Motion we can look at on this cabinet. It's pretty cool. And other companies have this too. So we start with the door open. This is the cabinet out of the bathroom here at the shop. No. Isn't that cool, that soft close? And I'm not sure these are actually Bloom hinges, but it's a really nice effect on a cabinet. So let's go ahead and look at the inside too. Oh, these are Bloom hinges even. Isn't that handy? All right, so we have to drill a cup hole here and one down there for the other hinge. When you're doing anybody's European hardware, this inset amount is very, very critical. Am I in a good spot for you, Krista?
No, you need to turn it just a little bit this way more.
Like that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And we're looking at this.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to get a pencil instead of my fat finger. Okay. The distance from the edge of the door to the edge of the cup hole is going to control, end of the day, it's going to control whether or not this door works. That number is generally called out by the manufacturer. It's usually got a little bit of a span, 3 millimeters to 6 millimeters, which is about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. What I usually do, if I have any question at all about drilling these holes, I'll cut a piece of plywood scrap to the same size as my door. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Cut a plywood scrap to the same size as the door, drill those cup holes where I think they should be drilled, and then check and see if that's going to work on my cabinet. Once I've confirmed it, then I go ahead and do that to the real door. I like doing these holes on a drill press because I can use a fence on the drill press as opposed to a handheld drill. I can use a fence on the drill press to make sure that they're dead on. There are drilling jigs that can be attached to doors, so you can use a handheld drill and make this happen. Distance up and distance down, distance up from the bottom and down from the top is way more subjective. Visually, I like to use about the size of the hinge as my distance down from the top. And that's where I locate that.
Great. All right. John asks, he just bought a beautiful 2x8 cherry board that was flat sawn and has gorgeous cathedral grain. Then he found out, unfortunately, it was too unstable to build with. What can he use it for safely? He's worried about cupping, etc.
All right, so with 2x material, with thick stock, here's what John is probably up against, is that it's easy to improperly dry thick material, and it's called case hardening. It's easy to have the outside of the material drier than the core. And this can also happen to thin stock, but it's just because of the amount of meat here, it's easier to have that foible with thick stuff. Symptomatically, what happens with this is when you cut into it, it's back to what we were talking about on the table saw. It starts to react. It might pinch in on the curve. It might expand from the curve. What can he safely do with it? Well, one, you got to be really careful if you're going to cut it on a table saw because of that potential for pinching. Unfortunately, honestly, you've got stuff that's just plain unstable. It's going to be hard to work with. When you're planing this, and really when you're planing anything, this is a good approach, but especially with stock that's been case hardened, plane a face, flip it, plane a face, flip it, plane a face. So if we want to reduce 2 inches to 1 3/4, don't take 1/4 inch off one face. Take 1/8 off this face and 1/8 off this face. And that helps keep it stable because we're removing the same amount of case hardened material from each face. You could try, if you can safely cut it, and a bandsaw might be a better choice for cutting than a table saw. You could cut it apart, and then it seems counterintuitive, but cut it apart, then glue it back together, offsetting the pieces so you don't have the same edge going back together to get back to the width that you need for whatever you want to work with. But with case hardened stuff that's just giving you kerfluiness, it's pretty hard to make that work.
Okay, great. For those of us that just joined us, I'm here with George Valdriska, Managing Editor of Woodworkers Guild of America. If you look right below the video right now, you'll see a banner. You can click on that, and that will take you to another page for WWGOA that will give you a free buyer's guide
How to buy a router.
for routers. So
and you can never have too many routers.
that's right. Go on out and
Just like
download that.
routers and guitars. You never have too many.
All right. Ernie says he has a Hammond organ that he wants to take apart. OMG, probably just like the one I have.
Krista has a
It's
hand.
from 1961.
So tell them what you did when your aunt and uncle gave you the organ.
Yeah.
And then you posted on Facebook.
Thanks for the organ donation.
Thank you for the organ donation.
Yeah. Anyways, It's made out of cherry wood.
Nice.
And he's wondering what's the best way to disassemble it. I think he's worried about breaking the cherry wood.
Boy, I don't know how organs are put together. That sounds so weird to say. We're talking about a musical instrument. I think looking at the back, there's going to be a way to take a back off, and then you're going to have to look inside. Is it old enough that it's possibly held together with hide glue? And this is a rhetorical question. I don't know. If so, hide glue will come apart with hot water. You can inject using a syringe. You can inject hot water into the joint, and the hide glue will melt. And then you can clean that off, and things will start to come apart pretty easily. If it's glued together with yellow glue or some similar glue like that, boy, it's going to be pretty hard to disassemble. So I don't have great advice. You got to start looking inside there and see what it is that's holding it together. Mechanical fasteners got to come out first before you start trying to do anything, to make sure you're not breaking parts because screws are still in place.
Okay, thank you. Michael in Australia is asking this. Sharpening of hand plane blades. He has a curved blade. What is the advantage of this?
Well, I know I own one. Let me look a second here. Anything else that's like just a talking answer?
Yeah, yep. Rob would like to know if there's going to be an article on I think it's supposed to be DIY CNC router.
Well, funny you should ask, Rob. No, that's that. We currently have about 5 or 6 CNC related videos on WWGOA. And I think there's 1 or 2 more in the can that just aren't out of the edit suite yet. Shoot. Well, I own around, so yes, to answer your question, there's quite a bit of stuff already on GOA. I'm editing as we speak a CNC class. It's about 90 minutes or so long. I'm really concentrated on an introduction to benchtop CNC. Let me look at one more. Okay. Where do you want me to?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. This plane has a round iron, rounded. This is called a scrub plane. And when you're first leveling a board out, and again, this goes back to I'm not a huge hand tool guy. This goes back to my hand tool days 25 years ago, teaching with the Peace Corps in Swaziland, Africa. When you're first working on a rough sawn board, you use a scrub plane at about 45 degrees to the grain, not parallel to the grain, to start knocking the rough sawn down. Then eventually you migrate to a jack plane. So there was a lot of looking for a relatively short answer.
Oh, great.
But that's what they're
Well, that's all right. While we're on the subject of sharpening, kind of, right? Okay. Larry would like to know, how does he know when he needs his blades sharpened, which I know we've talked about in the past, but I think more importantly, if he's going to send them somewhere for sharpening, what questions should he ask the person he's going to send his precious tools to be sharpened?
Let's do that one first. And I would ask them for customers to whom you can speak and ask about the quality of their work. I'd ask for a customer list. And boy, if you start to find there's all sorts of professional woodworking shops that are using that service, that's a great sign. Now, how do I know when stuff is dull? You stay here, Chris, because I can be right back. And I will get a deal solved. Okay, so we can apply this rule to any cutting tool that you have in your shop, table saw blade, router bit, and I'm going to come out here and ask you to get as much zoom as you can right there on my sort of dirty, disgusting thumbnail. All right. Folks at home, you got a great camera person here. There we are right there. So here's what I'm doing. On my alternate top bevel blade, which is in my right hand, that tooth points down. I'm going to just touch it to my thumbnail so I'm not pushing down, and I'm dragging it across my thumbnail. If it's sharp, I can see it's etching my thumbnail, which on these live streams where we lose a little video quality, you might not be able to see it, but I can tell on this one, it is in fact, oh, nice job. Do you think you can see it, Kristen? Do you think they can see it?
Well, I can see it.
Okay.
I can see 2 lines on your thumbnail.
Okay.
Oh,
So it's lifting my nail. That tells me that this blade is still sharp. What happens, dull means that these tips start to get rounded. When they're rounded, and I try to do this, it ain't gonna happen. So you can do this test with router bits and table saw blades. Now, if you find that a blade is not cutting well, and you do this test and it passes, in a lot of cases, it's just because it's dirty. And if you get a lot of sap and resin on the side of the blade, it's going to prevent it from being able to effectively cut. So the thumbnail test that's a great way to go. That's a great objective test to do on your cutting tools.
Okay, great. Greg has just purchased a lathe.
Yay!
He's watched some of your videos where you've turned a bowl from a log, which was cut in half. Okay. Can he turn a bowl from the end grain of a piece of log? Okay, short answer. Also, any issues using dried logs versus green logs?
I hate it. I am a huge advocate of turning green wood. There's nothing wrong with turning the dry stuff. Bottom line is just dry wood is harder than wet wood. So the cutting is way easier of green wood, but then you got to deal with the fact that it is going to dry, shrink, contract. Let's hit back on the end grain thing. If you just hollow end grain, especially on a green log, you're probably going to get all sorts of splits and checks in the bottom of it as it starts to dry. So traditionally, most hollowed stuff is turned cross grain. And I mean, there are exceptions to that. I've got some small, well, here's the thing. So there's a wine goblet I turned, maple and walnut. And of course, that's end grained hollowed in order for it to be a little goblet. So it's done, but it's not commonly done if you can avoid it.
Okay. All right. Dustin has a question about bandsaw setup and drift. Okay. So
he was going to want us to get the drift.
Okay.
It's only my second joke tonight.
I know. And we all appreciate that.
Holding myself back.
Yes. Okay. So he's watched someone else's video called the Bandsaw Clinic. And this person says if you put the blade gullets on the crown of the wheel, there is no drift. What are your thoughts? Okay.
If that works, great. If it works, great. But I find I use great bandsaw blades. I use Timberwolf bandsaw blades, low tension blades. I've got 2 bandsaws. I've got a Laguna bandsaw and a Bridgewood bandsaw. I think I'm reasonably good at setting up a bandsaw, but I almost always find I have to do a little bit of drift compensation to get a really, really good resaw. If getting the gullets in the right spot on the crown works, I would just do a test. Put them in that spot and try a resaw. And if it works, go baby go. And if not, we've got all sorts of video and articles on GOA about how to do drift compensation.
Perfect. Gary would like to know, what would you say is the minimum thickness for good edge gluing of hardwoods? Is a 1/4 inch too thin?
What? You're probably okay. I mean, what's the difference between gluing 1/2 inch and planing it down to a 1/4? I think you've still got a good glue bond there. So no, I think if you need a 1/4 inch panel and you don't want to do 1/4 inch edge to edge, I think you're going to be fine.
Okay, wonderful. So Bob has a question about finishing and painting. So I'm not 100% sure on this one, but let's try it.
If it's for us, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's planning on painting a natural finish front door. Okay, so a natural finish front door. I get that. He's planning to paint it with red enamel. Should he prep it first with a sealer or something in case he decides in a few years he doesn't want the red on there anymore?
Oh, well, I'm not concerned about that, but I'm concerned about adhesion. So here's what I would do. I would go to, this is a great spot, not that people at home centers maybe don't know what they're talking about, but if you use a paint store like a Sherwin-Williams or the other name of the paint store here locally is escaping me, you buy the paint from them. You tell them exactly what you're doing. I'm going to say if you've got a wooden exterior door, it's probably got polyurethane on it. I'm not sure that you could not do anything and expect any paint to stick to that polyurethane. I think it's at least got to be sanded, if not maybe sanded, then dewaxed shellac, then paint over the top of that. But I'd either call the paint company and ask them if you already own the paint, or I'd buy the paint from a good paint store and ask them to really narrow it down. Because I think I'm not worried about taking it off in years to come. I'm worried about the paint flaking off before you're ready to take it off.
Oh, thanks,
That's
George.
A harsh environment. What?
For the answer.
Oh.
Okay. Chris?
You were saying that, and I'm okay.
Chris would like to know, and I hope I read this question right. Is it possible to use the planer to thin strips of wood accurately, such as thinning a 2 millimeter thick piece down to 1.7 millimeters? So
for us Anglophiles, that's not the right word, but for us imperial measurers, right? It's either imperial or metric. 3 millimeters is 1/8 of an inch, so 2 millimeters is less than that. 1.5 millimeters is way less than that. So here's what, Krista, we haven't really run a tool tonight, so
Nope.
let's make that happen.
Okay.
Let's head for the planer. I'm going to get you some. I know you like hearing protection as much as I do, and I've got some thin strips over here. So let's just. This isn't catastrophic, but we can show people the downside of doing this.
Perfect. Watch out, Sheba.
This particular chunk of material. This is a piece of aspen. It's an offcut of aspen. Good trick from my friend Dave McKintrick. Whenever I have these small offcuts, I cut them to 12 or 14 inches and I stick them in a coffee can and save them. And then later when I need stir sticks or whatever, demonstrations for live streams, I can grab these. So what we'll do, it's currently probably 5/16 of an inch thick. We're going to send it through this benchtop planer, get it as skinny as we can, and we'll just see what happens. I got to walk over here and turn the dust collector on.
Do we need to turn that one back on?
Nope. I'll get it over here. Probably down to about 1/4 inch or so. We're going to keep going. Now here's where this starts to go wrong. Should I shut off the dust collector, you think? I need a remote for my dust collector. Here's where this starts to go wrong, is that the piece is so thin that as it trailed out the cut, this end lifted. And that's where we got that big chip there. On the front end, this is also kerflooey, and maybe you can see, let me hold it still for you. It's quite a bit thinner here than it is here because the front end lifted into the cutter. He wants to go to a 1.5 millimeters. Right now, we're probably still at 3 millimeters, about 1/8 of an inch. We'll do a couple more passes, and you might hear as it's feeding, chuk, 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 where it really lifts into the cutter head and it starts chipping wood out of it. That last pass, that's as low as I can go on this planer, and it's got pretty significant chips taken out of it. So at the end of the day, to just feed like we did, a planer's not a great choice for this. A surface sander instead of a planer would be better, but an alternative would be piece of melamine, double face tape your pieces onto the melamine, and then feed everything together. And the double face tape is going to secure these down to that melamine backer so that they can't lift and chip like that. So if you must do it on a planer, the backer board with the double face tape is going to give you a better chance, not 100% chance, but give you a better chance of getting away with it.
Okay, let's just stay here because we only have a couple minutes left. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. So Val has a question. Val has 10-inch wide pine boards that are cupped. Val wants to mill them down so they are flat. His planer does not work. It's just flattening the boards when they go through. So the rollers flatten them out. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, so here's the deal. What Val's up against. We have an in-feed roller and an out-feed roller on the planer, and their job is to put down pressure on the board, and that's what allows it to feed through. So when they put down pressure on, they're taking the cup out. It goes under the cutter head, and then when it comes out from this out-feed roller, it springs back up and has a cut. I would cut them in 2 or 3, then plane them, then glue them back together. Anything that you do on a planer is going to give you that problem. An alternative would be use a handheld planer, a handheld electric planer, and with the cup side up, hand plane off the high spots of the cup. If you want kind of a reference on what I'm talking about here, Dave McKintrick did an article for GOA that is about a big natural edge table, and he used winding sticks and a handheld planer to get the high spots off of it to level it out. Talking about a similar thing here. So easiest approach would be run them through the table saw and cut them into smaller pieces and then glue them back together. Before we move back, what time is it?
7:54.
Wow. Got to ask the question, let us know where you're watching from, because I think it's always cool to hear where in the world people are watching. It's like, where's Wallet? Except it's, where's WWGOA?
Okay.
And just put your location in the comments.
Yeah. So for those of you who have just joined us, I'm here with George Vondruska, managing editor of WWGOA. We're almost out of time. I can't believe it. Today we have a special for you. Go to the bottom of this video. You'll see a banner. You click on that. Takes you out to another page for WWGOA where you can download a router buying guide. So if you guys are interested in buying routers, go and get that. Okay.
Hey, let's ask. So Sam is the person behind the scenes here running a bunch of stuff. Sam, do we have a date for the next? I think we do. What month are we in? July. Do we have an August live on the calendar that we could tell people right now?
Well, why don't we answer some questions while she's getting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not standing here waiting. I'm just.
So Hessie wants to know, what is the best way to remove sap and resin from blades?
Blade cleaner. So you stay where you are. That's a CMT, I think it's 2050 it's called. There's a lot of this stuff out there. It's a very benign one. I've heard people talk about using oven cleaner. I don't think that's a great idea. Here's the perfect solution for this, stealing this idea from contributing editor Bruce Kiefer. Next time you use a 5-gallon bucket, save the lid, and a 10-inch blade will perfectly fit into the inner part of a 5-gallon bucket lid, and then spritz. Let that sit a couple minutes. Today's products, when we get away from oven cleaner, they're way more benign, where of course oven cleaner would be stinging my fingers right now. In just those couple seconds, this has already taken these black marks off of here. So let that soak. You can scrub it with a really soft bristle brush or just a rag. And then of course, same thing to the other side. Regular maintenance of that will really help your blades work a whole lot better.
Thank you so much, George. I don't know if you're going to have time for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And this is why. Because George goes through, and if we don't get to your question, he goes through and he answers it afterwards. So he types it in so you can see the answer. This one I think might be a little bit too intense for you to type it out. So that's why I'm just going to ask.
Oh, so like easier to do than to...
I think easier
right.
for you to talk through than to write. Yeah, but it could be a little too much. But I know you know it. Andy wants to know, can you go through the process of creating wood blades from fresh cut logs, removing the pith, coatings, etc.?
I can on a video that's on WWGOA.
Oh shoot, that's easier than I thought.
So, well, yeah, so there's two tools in this shop that are the primary tools for this. One is an electric chainsaw that was under $100 from a home center. Wonderful purchase. So I just use that in the shop or right outside the shop door to get them to a size that the bandsaw will handle them. And then on the bandsaw, I rough out the blank. But there's a complete video on this on WWGOA.com that'll take you through that process. You can also search electric chainsaw. There's a video where all we did is show how effective the electric chainsaw is on logs.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. The next live is Wednesday, August 31st at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Wednesday, August 31st.
Yep.
Mark your calendars.
Yep.
Be here or be square.
Okay, and then we have a follow-up from Rob. He had asked about, CNC videos. He wants to know if there's going to be any videos on how to make your own CNC routers.
Oh.
No.
Not in my foreseeable future.
Okay. And is there a good resource for finding plain woodworking plans? Do you have any suggestions? He wants to make a vanity, sounds like.
Well, we've got woodworking plans on GOA. I don't know that we do or do not have a vanity. Outside of that, I would try Google and Google vanity plans. It's an interesting mix of words. I wonder what you would get, vanity plans, but
Who knows?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
All right, so it's 7:59. Would you like me to do one more question?
I think we could do one more question, and I'm, of course, dying to hear if people have responded to the "from whence I am watching" question.
Okay, well, I will try and help you out here. So Harold is having a problem with his end grain in his turning. He's particularly with the inside of a bowl. He spends hours sanding it.
Okay,
Yes,
so the missing part of the question would be, Harold, are you using a bowl scraper? Are you shearing with a bowl gouge? In either case, the tools have to be sharp, or sharpest. At the end of the day, you could scrape wood on a lathe with a screwdriver, but it would do a horrible job. You really got to have your tools nice and sharp. Take a delicate pass, and then when you turn a bowl, direction is really important. The direction that you cut. So this is a chunk of, I think it's apple wood that was turned some time ago. On the outside of the bowl, I want my last pass to go from rim toward the bottom. No, I'm sorry, I got to take that back. I'm saying it the wrong way. On the outside of the bowl, I want my last pass to go from the center here toward the rim. Small diameter to large diameter. And I'll do the Y in just a second. On the inside, just the opposite. We want to go from large diameter to small. So here's the deal. The grain in this bowl is like this. So we have end grain, end grain. And the grain inside there looks like my two fingers, meaning there's a piece with shorter grain followed by a piece with longer grain. So if I cut small diameter to large, I'm cutting uphill, and with the finger analogy, this piece is going to tend to break off because it's not supported by this one. That looks like a chip in your material, a tear. If I go this way, that's a downhill cut. This one is supported by this one, and that gives you better cut quality. Quit making faces on the other side of the camera and messing me up. So sharp chisels, make sure that you're always downhill, outside of the bowl, inside of the bowl. And then from there, it's technique. We do have quite a few turning videos. We've got a master bowl turning class on WWGOA. And in those, we do spend a lot of time talking about the body dynamics, where you stand, how to hold the chisel, how to make the cut, so that you can get a good cut quality.
Okay.
Sanding stinks.
Sanding does stink. I hate sanding.
Krista has turned bowls.
That's right. And I hate sanding. So I empathize.
Yep.
All right. So here we go. You're ready, George.
Is this the location?
Yeah, of course it is.
All about location, location,
Right.
location.
So we've got a lot of people from all over the United States. So I'm not going to really go through that. Although I don't see Hawaii and I don't see Alaska. I
So
don't know what they're doing.
It's easier to list the states that are not on there,
Yeah.
basically.
Hawaii and Alaska.
I wonder if it could be a time zone thing. What time is it in Hawaii right
I
now?
have no idea. But I bet you it's warmer than it is here.
It's early, right? Yeah.
So anyways, and then we've got...
It might not be warmer than here. It's like 90 degrees
No,
and
maybe.
88% humidity.
Yeah, maybe. So we also, so we have also Australia, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and it's 3 p.m. in Hawaii.
3 p.m.
Yeah, but
Cool.
I think this is the first time we've had a Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Hello, Sri Lanka.
Say hello back.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That is a new one.
I can
And thank you, Australia and New Zealand. We have a lot of viewers in those two countries. I was in New Zealand for 8 weeks at one point, right after that Peace Corps stint. It was very cool. A lot of woodworkers. Met a lot of woodworkers.
Okay. So again, our next live
I already forgot the date.
is okay. It's
It's
Wednesday,
in August.
August 31st.
Wednesday,
The
August 31st.
last day in August.
The last day in August.
7 p.m. Central Time, right?
Yep.
For all of those people that we did not get to your questions live, George is going to sit down right after this. I know, I've seen him, and he's going to type out your answers. So just check back, tomorrow morning?
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, I kind of type them overnight. It takes me like 17 hours, and then but you're worth it. And then they should be posted by mid-morning or so tomorrow.
Yep. So come back, check for your answers if we didn't get to them here, because George does answer them. If you didn't sign up for the free router download, buying guide, click on that banner right under the video and go ahead and get that. And then if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, go ahead and sign up for that. Also, lots of tips, videos, techniques, etc., etc.
We had kind of a turning night here tonight.
Yeah, kind of.
Let's so I'm going to embarrass myself with the dog again because this failed epically last time. And we'll see if we can get, could she be more relaxed and more, I don't know if this is going to work. You got her? There's Sheba the Benchdog resting comfortably, and she is capable of waving goodbye. So come on, she sit up. All right, now tell me again, because this is not my dog, this is Krista's dog. If I go, all right, wave goodbye. Wave goodbye. Wave goodbye. Yay! Was that as good as it gets, or not so much?
It's okay for you.
Okay. Wave goodbye. Oh, yay! Or is that high five?
That's high five.
Oh, high five. It was a great live, Sheba. Give me a high five. Right. Yay for Sheba the Benchdog. Okay.
Okay, let's say good night.
All right. Good night, Gracie.
All right, good night.